Hello, this is Mark Luke Carrier welcoming you once again to Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies. Today, the Count and his bogus Goya, an LAPD story. Now, speaking of the LAPD, I'd like to give a shout out to Lieutenant Don Harisic, with whom I had the pleasure of collaborating a few times. A great guy and a very good detective. So let's carry on. An elderly Hungarian couple had fled communist Hungary to live in Hollywood, where they occasionally frequented the Zardas Hungarian restaurant for a nostalgia fix. A bit of homestyle veal goulash, chicken paprika, and Magyar TV shows playing in the background. It was almost like being back in Budapest. And that's where they met a fellow expatriate who introduced himself as a count. He was a pleasant young man, handsome, well-groomed, polite, and obviously well-bred. What the old couple would describe as a nice boy. They soon confided in this man, telling him that they fled the tyranny of communism with little else but a small painting. The portrait of the rabbi was their prized possession, although they had no idea what it was worth. Imagine, they mused, if it was truly valuable. Worth thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars. Selling it would solve all their problems. An easy high road to the American dream. Perhaps, suggested the Count, he could be of some assistance. His friends in the art business could give the painting a good cleaning, possibly appraise it and tell them how and where to get top dollar for it. The painting was entrusted to the old couple's new best friend. After all, they had no reason not to trust them. They never again saw the Count or the painting. The old couple tried unsuccessfully for years to locate their property and the thief who had stolen it. The husband eventually passed away, leaving his elderly widow to continue the quest on her own. Still, she hesitated to call the police. Being from a communist country, she was wary of the law and symbols of authority. On top of that, the Count put the word out that he would destroy the painting if she persisted in trying to locate him. Exhausting all her options, she finally relented and contacted the Los Angeles Police Department. The trail was 3 years old by the time the LAPD art theft detail got on the case of the Count and the missing painting of the rabbi. But soon enough, they found out that the perpetrator was a transient who lived in a series of cheap motels. He carried no ID or credit cards and had no visible means of support. The only apparent stability in his life was a permanent mail drop he used as an address and a proclivity for taking advantage of people who trusted him. The police uncovered that 8 years earlier in Hungary, this fellow, the Count, the bogus Count, by the way, had rented a room from a man. The very same evening, the landlord and his new tenant proceeded to a bar to celebrate the arrangement. The Count slipped out, returned to the man's home, and used his key to gain entry. He broke into the man's safe and stole the equivalent of 50,000 American dollars. The Count then fled to Italy with the loot and later successfully applied for refugee status in the United States. The Hungarian police issued a warrant for the Count's arrest and requested his extradition. The search went nationwide, with the U.S. Marshals and the Immigration and Naturalization Service joining in the chase. The Count looks like a rogue from Central Casting in many of his photos. You can almost smell the cheap cologne wafting off him. Not surprisingly, the police discovered that he also had a record in L.A. In a classic scenario, he'd befriended a woman 20 years his senior and soon became her lover. True love took its course, as it were, and the couple decided to cohabit. They had not been under the same roof for long when the Count got hold of the woman's jewelry and pawned it. He was arrested and charged with theft, but the district attorney office refused to prosecute. The Count was by now busy marketing the painting of the rabbi, presenting it as his own. To do so, he introduced himself as a member of a fake organization called the Solo Goya Institute. The Count did nothing by halves. The website carried a fake family history filled with exciting references to castles, secret agents and Nazis, and featuring heroic pageantry illustrated by a phony coat of arms. Here's an excerpt from the text, and I quote, "True to her noble bloodline and steel backbone, she oversaw the raising and formal education of the present Count, teaching him all she knew of humanity, including an unquenchable thirst for knowledge in all things, especially art and music. Countess Italica taught him to never forget who and what he is, and the long line of noblemen and women he now embodies and must forever represent." Close quotes. Now, the Count also reinvented the identity of the rabbi painting, now referring to it as El Famoso Rabbino. He made cheap reproductions of it and sold them as limited edition prints with the following sales pitch, quote, "Because of the intimate handling, the Count has sensed the whispering of Goya, Rembrandt, and Dürer, urging him to complete their dreams of bringing fine art to the whole of mankind. It is his fervent desire that this first limited edition of El Famoso Rabbino, reproduced on canvas, will bring to the homes and places of meditation and worship of all who own them the radiation of the great master's message and the ageless wisdom of the rabbi." Close quotes. I'd like to point out to you, I didn't write that. That was the Count's handiwork. The LAPD art theft squad's surveillance of the Count's family and friends led them to a cheap apartment in low-rent district of North Hollywood. The Count was soon spotted exiting the flat. The subsequent police raid uncovered the Count and his family stuffed into two small rooms they shared with a man in the porn business, very different from the Count's splendid Hungarian castle. The officers seized the rabbi's portrait, which they found hidden in a briefcase. The police investigation revealed that the Count had had a professional video produced to promote investments in the portrait of the rabbi. In it, his friend from the porn industry identified himself as the Count's attaché, and in turn introduced a character from Montreal, Quebec, called Dr. Rolf Medjesi. The Count stood nearby, holding the portrait as the alleged art expert Dr. Medjesi explained that the little painting was in fact an undiscovered Goya. How did he arrive at this attribution? Medjesi claimed to be gifted with a special talent. Now wait for it, an ability to identify what he called microsignatures, written on the painting by none other than Goya. He explained that he had a unique three-dimensional vision, whatever that is, allowing him to detect the features of a painting that remained invisible to normal observers. In the late 1980s, Medjesi, who operated a Montreal company called the Institute for Discovery and Documentation, had made the news with an extraordinary postulate. He claimed that Goya, to play a trick on the art world, had forged several works attributed to other artists, integrating and concealing several, microsignatures in the composition to prove that he'd painted the works. Thus, Da Vinci's Virgin at the Rock, Michelangelo's Testa Virile Lunate, and Rembrandt's Man with the Golden Helmet, you guessed it, were all a work of Goya. He further questioned the legitimacy of Raphael's Three Graces. Why not? Explaining that his gift of, again, three-dimensional vision allowed him to see otherwise invisible signatures by Goya on the lips, hips, buttocks, underarms, and eyebrows of the work's subjects. Wow. Quoted in an article in the Montreal Gazette dated October 9, 1987, the Louvre Museum's curator at the time, Arnaud Brejon de Lavergne, called the claims totally absurd. In the Windsor Star on October 16th of the same year, he added, quote, "We see no microsignatures in Da Vinci's Virgin at the Rock. The painting has been traced to the end of the 15th century, and it could not have been painted by someone born 200 years later." Close quotes. Now, this was not the first time Medjesi found himself on the wrong side of the law. An art dealer in Palm Springs complained to the authorities that she'd been conned when he'd retained her to sell over 200 works of art that he kept in New York City. The works, mostly on paper, were allegedly by Matisse, Modigliani, Calder, Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Goya, and others. Medici told her that he'd authenticated the pieces himself. But she soon learned, of course, that they were all fakes. Police found that when the Count's micro-signature method of attribution proved too phantasmagorical, to say the least, for any serious buyer, he changed tactics by trying to use the painting as collateral on a multi-million-dollar bank loan. Medici providing an authentication, and the Count cooking up a fake provenance, claiming the work had been in his family for generations. He'd also commissioned an appraisal of convenience that set the value of the painting at no less than $75 million. The recovered painting of the old rabbi didn't look the same. The work had been extensively cleaned, restored, and repaired. To prevent the Count from claiming that this was not the same work he'd stolen from the old couple, the police had the work x-rayed, revealing a heavily restored area, along with the signature of an unknown artist. By the way, not a Goya micro-signature in sight. Experts classified the painting of the rabbi as decorative art, with little more than sentimental value. The Count faced charges of theft and fraud. The courtroom turned into a circus. But more seriously, the Count's elderly victim was a prey to intimidation on 2 occasions. Thugs threatened physical violence if she persisted in testifying for the prosecution. The Count was nonetheless found guilty on all counts, sent to prison, and scheduled for eventual extradition to Hungary. Well, that's it for this episode of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies. Please subscribe, and if you're a victim of art fraud, please write to me. My email is fakesandfrauds, all in one word, at writeme, WRITEME.com. In closing, please note that a illustrated print version of Fakes, Frauds, and Phonies is available at Amazon worldwide, in Kindle or paperback format. So this is your host, Mark Luke Carrier, saying bye-bye for now.